All righty, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Tuesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, guys.
Happy Valentine's Day,
Brandon,
bud.
yeah, Brandon's
Happy
probably got a
Valentine's Day,
hot,
fellas.
he probably has a hot date tonight.
Yeah, I
Um,
had PT at 4 in the morning. That was pretty fun. And then school all day.
yeah,
Pretty
now
fun.
you got a hot date by yourself now. And your roommates are gone now. There you go. So anyway, so today's episode, we're going to be talking some OU recruiting. There's been some reports that have come out over the last few days of some upcoming visits and recent offers, and OU made a top 6 for running back. So we're going to be talking about that. And then we're also going to be talking about the Super Bowl. I mean, and, obviously, I thought it was a great game. It was kind of a little bit of an unfortunate ending as far as the officials getting involved, but I didn't have a dog in the fight, and I thought it was an entertaining game. So we'll have our thoughts and have a discussion towards the end. So let's jump into it. 2024, I almost said 23, 2024 5-star linebacker, the number one linebacker in the class, the number 6 overall player, according to 247, Sammy Brown from Jefferson, Georgia, is slated to attend and visit Oklahoma the first week of April. And that right now is the only upcoming visit that he has on the books. Obviously, he's going to be taking more over the next few months, and it seems like he will be going between, announcing a top 5 soon and making his officials and probably making a decision by sometime this summer. And it seems like that's the timeline and what he's going to do. And obviously, Oklahoma is getting great looks. I believe he's been on campus maybe one time. I'm trying to remember, but I believe we've talked about him one time visiting. And, his relationship goes back with Venables back to Clemson. Jose, what do you think about Sammy Brown? Obviously, he's the number one linebacker in the class. He's an elite player. What do you think?
Yeah, we've talked about him 2 times now, and I think the first time, like you mentioned, it was when he visited last year. It might have been almost exactly a year ago, probably for Junior Day or some event in the spring. He's clearly very talented, and like you said, the relationship there's been existent with Venables for a while. We mentioned it last time we talked about him about probably a few weeks ago. The relationship that's also going to be interesting to pay attention to is with Roof and the entire family. Apparently, Roof was recruiting his dad back in the day out of high school to play wherever Roof was coaching at the time. And I don't believe that he committed to Roof, but the relationship is still there, kind of picked up where they left off now that they're recruiting Sammy. Hopefully it goes in their favor. I think Oklahoma's going to do, again, it's the entire defense. It's really going to be kind of a prove it year for Venables and the staff. Can you make these linebackers look better? Can you make the defensive line look better? I think the defensive backs were looking a little bit better last year, and that's why we got to see better recruiting in the last class outside of Brandon Hall and Jay Valai just being outstanding recruiters. They improved throughout the season more so than the other groups. So if this year the linebackers and the defensive line step up, you'll see guys like Sammy Brown feel a little bit more comfortable and entertaining that if they were to cut their list down to like a 2 or 3, where maybe Oklahoma wouldn't normally make it for a 5-star linebacker. Maybe this time around they would. Or David Stone. I know we're not going to talk about him in this video, but situations like that, Oklahoma might be more confident in going into the later part of their recruitments. And Sammy Brown would be a big get. It's just Georgia. They're going to be the hardest team to beat for this guy, given that they're the defending national champions to back-to-back. They're putting together what might be the best class ever in both this 2024 class and 2025 class already. Like, it's going to be tough to beat Georgia for really any defensive player, especially a linebacker. Hopefully it goes Oklahoma's way, or at least makes it interesting towards the end. I don't have the highest of hopes, but it's not like a linebacker wanting to play for Venables is a crazy idea given his history with the position.
No, exactly. And like Rome said, it would be a huge get. But like we talked about when the SEC move was announced, like I think we could see this being with Sammy Brown's recruitment, it already coming into play, because Sammy Brown, if he wants to play SEC football, Oklahoma now offers that immediately for him. And this kid is a kid that I hope, we talked about it with Cecilia Kana, where Venables were kind of like Cecilia Kana was this guy. You circled in on him and it looked good all cycle. until now, obviously the very end there when he switched and went to UT. I hope Sammy Brown is his guy for this cycle, because he would be a huge get for that class. Obviously, the number one linebacker in the class, number 6 overall player. That's a huge get. So I hope Venables kind of circles in on him. I hope the move to the SEC helps already. And yeah, like Hose, I'm not super hopeful, but I think both of those things would help Oklahoma a lot if that's the way that we recruit him.
And he's also got the theme that Venables and his staffs are recruiting is very versatile. He plays running back as well. Last year as a junior had 181 carries for 1,459 yards and 21 rushing touchdowns. So he averaged a little over 130 yards a game, 8.1 yards a carry, which is not too shabby. I know Brandon likes that 10 plus, but not everyone can do that considering his main spot is linebacker at 113 total tackles. Just a guy that can go sideline to sideline and projects as someone that, considering the depth at Oklahoma at the linebacker position, could come in and compete for playing time day one. I do think it would be very hard for him at that point, but he's that special enough of a talent that there is a world where he could become in the rotation.
8 yards a carry. 8 yards a carry is really good, but football is so easy. If we could just average 3 yards a carry and run the ball every play, 3 yards, you would never lose. Isn't that crazy?
Math by Brandon.
You would never lose if you can get 3 yards every single time you run it. 2 planes. That's why you need to load up the offensive linemen, boys.
I'm surprised Levy and Venables hasn't called us for some analysis on some
3 yards per carry, boys. Every single play. It's all we need.
I mean, you just be like the Eagles and just line up. I mean, if you push Jalen Hurts 3 yards every time,
they would never lose. That quarterback sneak is unstoppable of them. But I think we should quit the podcasting game after we take off and then become coaches and win a Super Bowl and a national championship in the same season.
In the same season. So Sammy Brown, the fact that he's coming on campus, I do think is a good sign for Oklahoma. I don't believe that he would be visiting if the previous staff was here. I think it just speaks to what Venables and the rest of the coaching staff's trying to do. I'm not overly confident either. I wouldn't hold my breath on him committing to Oklahoma and being a Sooner, but there's a chance. I mean, you're telling me there's a chance it could happen. I just wouldn't hold my breath. So moving on to the next guy, another 2024 kid, James Peoples from San Antonio, Texas, 2024 4-star running back. He's the number 76 player overall, the number 6 running back in the class, so an elite player who put out his top 6. He also, for last year, he had 1,904 yards on 191 carries, so he averages basically a first down every time he touches the ball, and he rushed for 28 yards. He put out a top 6. That top 6 consisted of Oklahoma, TCU, Oregon, Alabama, Texas, and Ohio State. So pretty good programs. TCU is obviously a hometown program, them in Texas. Oregon is just Oregon, and they're always involved. I think the biggest threat here, in my opinion, is Alabama. What do you think about James Peoples, Brandon? I think we've talked about him a couple of weeks ago. You were obviously very high on him, but I mean, it seems like he's obviously very interested in Oklahoma.
Yeah, when we talked about him a couple weeks ago, I mentioned he was probably my favorite running back of the 24 class, and I'm going to stick by that. He's stamped, is what I talked about last time, and the fact that he's stamped in his highlight reel. He has that 10 yards of carry is what you're talking about. And I was watching his highlights again today. He can literally do everything as a running back. And, he's got highlights of himself dragging people to the end zone and making crazy plays. But all highlights, are designed to make you look good. But you mentioned it. When you carry the ball 200 times and average 10 yards a carry, if you just watch – if we were to go to his stadium and watch him play on a Friday night, every time he touches the ball would be like a highlight play. When you average 10 yards, there's not a lot of negatives happening. So that's ridiculous. And to do that at a high level of Texas high school football, I think is very impressive. I think he's my favorite running back in the class. I really, really hope Oklahoma can land him. I just think him and whoever else we get in the 24 class or beyond can form a 1-2 punch like we got with Sawchuk and Barnes that I think is going to be really special. We can just keep that rolling.
Yeah, last time I compared him to Saquon Barkley with his running style, I feel even more strongly about it now. Honestly, this entire group of top six schools, maybe outside of Oregon, and TCU, have decent running backs pretty regularly. And TCU, after last year, you got to watch out for them going into the 2024 cycle. They're going to be in a lot of top fives, top sixes, probably for the rest of this offseason, because that national championship hype is going to be there as long as they're remembered for that. Now, if we go into the year and if they go back to being the TCU that we expected them to be, then that'll probably die down. But they're going to be a player in this. Miller, I can't remember his first name. He had a pretty good season this year. Their running back coach isn't too bad, so I would expect them to be a major player here. I think Oklahoma's in a good spot. I mean, the entire running back group, if he is interested in playing for DeMarco Murray and having the Sooners across his chest, probably going to have to commit by early summer. Like if we start getting commitments in March, which I think a lot of people expect that to be the case. I would assume at least one running back would jump in at that point. I'm not sure who that running back would be, but then you only have one spot left for the position, unless there's a transfer or someone were to retire from football for some reason, then that might open up a spot. But the expected amount is two guys in this class. And if it's not James, and that might be the reason why Oklahoma doesn't end up getting him. I hope we do. Him and Jeremy Payne, I think, would be a really good duo. But we'll have to see. Again, it's going to be a race to the spots at this point.
And when you see one commit to Oklahoma, you're going to see a second one hop on board really quick because the spots are limited and they're going to want to secure their spot. I mean, who wouldn't want to go play for DeMarco Murray and Jeff Levy in this offense? I mean, last year you could see the flashes of the true freshmen between Javante Barnes and then Gavin Sawchuk in the Cheez-It Bowl. So obviously they're doing something right, and kids are going to want to play for Oklahoma. So I'd imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if the first running back hops on board sometime this spring, and then you see someone quickly thereafter commit and join in and fill it out and be done with the 24 running back room, which would be nice. So anyway, so moving on, Oklahoma has offered a few kids today, and I'm going to butcher his name. I've been known to butcher a name here or there. Oklahoma offered today 6'3", 288, but he might be actually more like 300 pounds. David Pale, I believe that's how you say it. He's a 2024 three-star defensive lineman out of Pennsylvania, originally from Alaska. And Oklahoma's offered him today. Ohio State just recently offered him. Washington offered him. Tennessee offered him. Colorado. So while he is just a three-star right now, he plays basketball. He does discus. He's a versatile kid. He's picking up offers. He's picking up steam. It seems like that he could very well get his fourth star the way that these offers are coming in and the hypes around him. Jose, what do you think about David? It's quite a spelling. Brandon pointed out on our group text.
Definitely a unique spelling to his name, but his tape shows that he moves really well. According to his Twitter, so this is self-reported by David, he's 303 pounds. For a guy that weighs that much, he looks like he moves like a dude that's 250. Light on his feet. He had speed on his tape, and it was kind of impressive how fast it looked like he was moving when he weighs a lot. He was playing some edge on some of the plays, so it might have been when he was a little bit lighter, I would assume, because it's crazy to think that someone that big was moving that well. If he was 300 pounds at the time, then that's probably why he's picking up all these offers. If you're 300 plus pounds and you're moving like any, power edge would, you've got some pretty good potential at the defensive line spot. You can be moved around and probably a defensive line coach's dream whenever they think about how they would build a defensive lineman. Big, agile, and fast. And obviously strong, but it's crazy we'll see what happens here. Obviously, new development. Not sure where Oklahoma is exactly, but if Oklahoma can be in with him for most of his recruitment, hopefully land a guy of his size, it would probably alleviate the concern of a lot of fans where you need a big boy like that to plug up the middle, make it hard for teams to run against you, especially on those 3-man fronts that Oklahoma ran a lot last year. You want bigger bodies down there.
Yeah, well, he has the coolest spelling of the class, like we talked about. It's really unique, really cool. But I think he's a very underrated player, and I think the offers would indicate that. You mentioned Ohio State, Tennessee, Colorado starting to offer the big boys. Oklahoma offered him, obviously. I think Penn State has an offer out to him. I think he's a 3-star, and he's getting these offers late. Just Alaska and moving to Pennsylvania, there's probably not a whole lot of coverage out there in Alaska. I think he's criminally underrated. Like Ho said, he moves very well. Remember when we first started talking about Phil Pisciotti a year ago, whatever, before he even committed, and Phil Pisciotti, before he made the move to Florida, was a Pennsylvania kid, and all three of us said it'd be really tough to beat out Penn State here, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we can beat out Penn State, and then obviously we were wrong, and he moved, committed to Oklahoma. This kid, for whatever reason, is giving me similar vibes in the Pennsylvania area. I think 24/7 has Penn State listed as warm, and no one else is warm yet. So all things would point towards Penn State, I guess. But it's early on, and I think Oklahoma would be lucky to get him, and then hopefully he does swing his way to OU.
In all fairness, I think the move to Florida helped out Oklahoma there, where Penn State didn't have as easy access. And maybe I would agree. I think for the most part, you always have to be wary of Penn State when you're going after Pennsylvania players.
You're probably right, but I do you guys remember if Pisciotti had committed to Oklahoma prior to the move to Florida?
I'm assuming it would have been right around the same time because he committed towards it was either like the middle or end of the summer, and he would have moved before the school year started. So, I mean, even if he stayed in Pennsylvania, right, then it's not like Penn State would have ever given up if they had easier access to him.
I feel you. No, the move to Florida definitely benefited us there. But although didn't he? Sorry, but didn't he even he didn't even put Penn State in his top 5 or anything? I don't think.
Yeah, that was the biggest surprise there.
That's what threw us all off. Yeah.
And I was going to say Penn State did offer him. They were his third offer, September 4th of last year. So, they have a little bit of a lead as far as time goes, about 5 months, but nothing that's insurmountable. It's not like they offered 2 years ago or something like that. Naturally, you would think Penn State would be in the driver's seat being in Pennsylvania, but it's kind of like a by Jove feel where while he's in Pennsylvania, he's not a Pennsylvania native and he didn't grow up loving the Nittany Lions. Not saying that he couldn't love them from Alaska. It just wouldn't make a lot of sense that he would have that strong allegiance like by Jove did with Oklahoma. And Brandon, I was going to let you put this little bit of a connection, little fun fact since you pointed it out, but his cousin is Penei Sewell.
Forgot about that. Yes. So that's another fun fact about him, and also would be interesting. I mean, it'd be like getting Arch Manning or an Arch Manning's garbage, but anytime you have an NFL great that close to you, it's fun. It's easy to. I imagine you can pick up the phone, and obviously they play different positions, but Penei Sewell's Penei Sewell. You can be like, hey, how do I beat tackles? And Penei Sewell can tell him what he can't defend, and then he can just do that.
Yeah, that's true. So made it this far. This is a mid-video plug. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review. That helps us out a lot. So that's Oklahoma talk. Let's talk a little bit of Super Bowl. Obviously, Sunday, Eagles, Chiefs. The Chiefs edged the Eagles out 38-35. Unfortunately, Jalen Hurts lost the Super Bowl. He played extremely well, about as good as you could hope for. Obviously, he had a major mistake, but it's tough to be mistake-free, especially on the biggest stage. And I wouldn't say that's the only play that costed the Eagles the Super Bowl. Brendan, what's your thought? Obviously, the flag at the very end, That's an easy one to point to, but what do you think?
No, I mean that's all. I mean, I'm just going to cut to the chase with it. I think it was one of the best Super Bowls, really, like that I've watched in a very long time. Very competitive, a lot of scoring, a lot of action. It was a fantastic Super Bowl. And then you have that call late in the game that kind of just ruins every bit of it, because we talked about it before the videos before we started recording. I think by the letter of the law, if you're one of those nerds who just call it textbook what the book says, I think it was technically holding at, but the problem with it was holding at the very, very top of the route that did not at all in any manner affect the play, affect the route. That ball was going to be incomplete regardless. And they call a very close ticky tacky call. And as Hose mentioned before we started recording, they missed one in the first quarter that was way worse. And then they call this one. I don't think that the NFL is rigged or anything. I think they made a nerd call by the book, whatever, and ended up costing Philadelphia. But as we talked about before the video, I do not believe that they make that call the other way. Meaning if Philadelphia has the ball there and Kansas City is about to get if Kansas City will lose based on that call, I don't think they call that. I think they give Mahomes a chance. I really wish they would have given Jalen Hurts a chance, because I think that game goes to at least overtime, and we keep one of the best Super Bowls I've ever seen going. And it's really unfortunate the way it ended.
Yeah, it stinks, but I mean, you did see two Sooners win a Super Bowl in Creed and Orlando Brown, so at least they get some rings, they get some jewelry. Who else is on the team? Blake Bell's still on the team.
Blake Bell and Winchester.
James Winchester.
Sorry, James, I forgot about you, bud. But anyways, 4 Sooners got rings this last Sunday. Good for them. I mean, I think to me it shows that Patrick Mahomes is on, the path to be considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterback to play in the NFL. Dude's been doing it since he became a starter for Kansas City, and yeah, he's benefited from very good coaching, but he's also put it on the field. I mean, you've seen Andy Reid with other quarterbacks, and they've never done anything like what Mahomes is doing now. So, I mean, it also shows that evaluation isn't those like Mel Kiper, what guys do in college isn't the end all be all for what they're going to do at the pro level. Kind of rare actually that a number one quarterback does what is expected of him going into the NFL. So, if you're a fan of any team that drafts a quarterback this year, don't hate it until like 2 or 3 years later when they show you that they suck.
I think to piggyback off of that, we kind of started this discussion before we started recording. So I think all of us agree, barring an injury or barring some crazy shit, just the way the game is played today and the fact that there's 18 games instead of 17, Patrick Mahomes will one day pass Tom Brady statistically, passing yards, touchdowns. He's going to pass that. So how many rings does he need to be the GOAT? I think Brum said 6 earlier, at least 6. I'd say 5. I think he's going to smoke all of his records. And I think if he gets 5, I think there's a legitimate he's the GOAT argument.
How many does Tom have?
7. I just, part of it was the whole Joe Montana deal. I mean, how many rings did Joe Montana have? What do you have, 4?
4, but he's
rings.
4-0 that's the thing they talked about with Montana.
Yeah, he's 4-0. Okay. I mean, Mahomes is 2-1 in Super Bowls, so he's already lost one. I think really it's going to be how he finishes. Like, he might win 5 Super Bowls, but how many times does he have to go? If he goes basically 12 times and he wins 5 of them, it's not a great record. But if he goes 8 and he wins 5 of them and he goes 5-3, that's pretty strong. I mean, it's hard to have a really great record, I think. And also with Joe Montana, this NFL is way more competitive and there's way better athletes. It's just like the NBA, with LeBron James and Jordan. I just feel like that LeBron's playing against better competition, night in and night out. And I think Mahomes will play better competition, or is playing better competition, than Joe Montana. Now, Tom Brady and him played very similar eras. And unfortunately, Tom Brady was part of the revolution of the passing game, but yet he still holds all the records. I mean, Mahomes, most likely, barring any crazy injury, will hold every single record if he's committed for 20 years. But not every player wants to play 20 years. He might be done after 12 to 15.
I don't think he needs to get to 7. It to me, it's not even how many times he gets there and wins. It's how he has to win them. Because if you think about Brady's career, no one really considered him. For the most part, I think most people came around to him being the GOAT of the NFL when he won one for Tampa. People hated him when he was a Patriot because the Patriots won all the time. And beginning those few early Super Bowls weren't because the offense was amazing. I mean, it was good, but the defense was one of the best in the NFL for those seasons. So some people were still saying that he got carried by the defense, so the defense helped him a ton. And then once he got to Tampa, he won. He showed that he was probably the best leader, at least one of the best leaders to ever be in the NFL. If Mahomes has to deal with like mid to below average defenses and just play shootouts every time he wins a Super Bowl, I think that's what would help his case in being greater than Tom Brady with lesser championship rings. Because you get there 12 times and only win 5, to me, especially in football, doesn't show that you weren't able to do your job. Sometimes your team just let you down. I mean, Peyton Manning, one of the greatest players and quarterbacks in NFL history, dude only has 2. And yeah, he definitely came short in some of those appearances and playoff games, but you also got to look at the rest of his team and how did they assist him, because that's also, they're team sports. It's not like wrestling or golf or swimming where it's all reliant. The winning and losing is all reliant on one individual. One individual can influence a game a lot, but it doesn't mean that, Jalen Hurts had 300 yards. He had a better day statistically than Patrick Mahomes and ended up being the loser.
I also will say this is Patrick Mahomes' best performance he's had in the Super Bowl. Before this, he hasn't played that well. I mean, if you look at, especially whenever they played Tampa, he was running for his life.
Yeah, that was on him. No one's going to play well in that game.
But even when they won, he didn't play that well. He played one good quarter against the 49ers. And he had a few turnovers and stuff. So as long as he can keep playing well and he plays for a long time, which I'd imagine he will, and Andy Reid stays in his place, I think he can. I just don't know if you're going to find a ton of quarterbacks and a ton of people that are committed to play 20 to 25 years. Because
that's true.
I just think part of it is it takes a very special person, because once you have as much money as Mahomes does and you play 10, 15, 12, 15 years and you won 3, 4, 5 rings, what's the point type deal?
Dude, yeah, he owns like all of Kansas City, doesn't he? He owns the Royals.
He bought into the Royals, bought into their soccer team.
Yeah.
The last thing he needs is for the Chiefs ownership to give him a little piece of that in his next contract.
He's doing well. To cut it back to Oklahoma quickly, just before we wrap it up, I think there's no coach in college who had a better night than Coach Bedenbaugh. 2/5 of the Chiefs starting line came from Oklahoma. And then Lane Johnson, obviously for Philly, came from Oklahoma. So 30% of the starting offensive linemen in the biggest game in football were coached by him. I don't understand how every offensive lineman doesn't want to come to Oklahoma after seeing shit like that. Like, truly, it's right there in front of you. Coach B coached all of those guys, and they're playing at the grandest stage. And all 3 of them are very high-level players. I think Lane Johnson is widely recognized as probably the best right tackle in football. Trent Williams didn't play in the Super Bowl, but he's, I think, the best left tackle in football. And Creed Humphrey, if he's not the best center in football, he's the second best and the best played for Philly. That's – to me, it seems pretty easy to recruit offensive linemen if you're Coach B. Just look at what you produce.
Creed Humphrey's going to be the best center once Jason Kelce retires, if he does. So I don't know. It was a great Super Bowl, and now it's just a countdown to college football and NFL football. The free agency is going to start. We're going to see who's going to win the free agency Super Bowl. The Dolphins have won that a few times. I don't know if the Dolphins will get crowned this year or not, but you and Jimmy Satterfield will be pumped about
we have no cap space. We're going to have to use Hudak coins again.
Just call Pat. Just
Well,
call
pretty
Pat
good
Riley.
at Hudak coins. Yeah.
Just call Pat. So, all right. Do you guys have any final thoughts, or Brandon? Do you just want to do the in video challenge?
Yeah, we'll just keep with the Super Bowl. Just give us your thoughts on that holding call. Like I said, my personal opinion, I think if you're a nerd, it's the right call because by the letter of the law, I think it was technically holding. But if you're a fan of the game, there's no way. And you guys agreed, you can't call that shit there on a tic tac call with the game on the line. I think you can't call that. So, just your opinion on that defensive holding. Drop it below.
Yeah, I would agree. And I just feel like if there's any question, don't make the call. So, and there was definitely a little bit of question in there. So, made it this far, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below, and we'll catch you guys next time.